Welcome to the Successful Home Inspector Podcast, where we discuss everything you need to know about home inspection from A to Z. Brought to you by Preston Sandlin and Home Inspection Carolina. We're here to share some success stories and some not so successful stories. Some things we can all learn from, and maybe, just maybe, we can help each other and raise the profession. So sit back, turn up the volume, and enjoy. Now, here's your host of the Successful Home Inspector Podcast, Preston Sandlin.
Guys, let's face it, Yellow Pages are dead. The old days of calling your company AAA Home Inspection and expecting to get calls from that by being number one on the Yellow Pages don't work anymore. Today, you got to be number one on the search engines. That's Google, Yahoo, Bing, or a couple of others. Billy Borner from St. Louis knows how to do this. He has been number one for quite some time, and it brings him thousands of dollars each month. I've talked to Billy, and he's decided to make this available for you. SEO Secrets. And he normally charges $49 for this instructional video, but for our listeners, we've worked out a deal where it's $39.95. For $39.95, you can bring thousands of dollars to your company each month as well. Go to the homepage, thesuccessfulhomeinspector.com, and look on the tab SEO Secrets. Click on that and go to Billy's link.
Well, all right, home inspectors and listeners out there, I have a special treat for you tonight. It might be day when you listen to this, but I am here with Phil LeBlanc with ProTech Inspections from Atlanta, Georgia. I've known Phil a long time. How you doing this evening, Phil?
Oh, we're doing good. Hello, everybody.
Well, Phil, tell us a little bit more about you because we'd like to get to know you personally.
Well, on a personal basis, starting way back, I was born in Salem, Massachusetts. I grew up on the North Shore in Lynn, Massachusetts. And right about 1994, I was working for a company called National Auto Credit. Right. And they transferred me to the Atlanta area to kind of oversee a southeast region of about 7 or 8 states. And so I got to travel a whole lot when I first moved to Atlanta. I wasn't in the little town of Lawrenceville where I moved at the time a whole lot because I was on the road, about 4 days every week. But that's what got me to in Atlanta. Fast forward a little bit, owned a auto finance and sales company for just that 10 years. And then it was 2005 I got into home inspecting. And just 3 years ago, I met this wonderful lady named Joyce Roderick that I'm engaged to marry, and she's building the company that we're currently involved in, ProTech Home and Property Inspections.
Well, congratulations, and she is a wonderful woman. I've had the pleasure of meeting her. Well, Phil, what made you get into home inspections? Did you have a home inspection, or did you know a home inspector? What made you interested in it?
You hit it. It's kind of funny. Everybody, I'm sure, has a story. I've heard a couple of them on your podcast. They're really good. But I was looking for about 2 or 3 years to transit from one business into another, and I looked at many things, and I hadn't found what hit me yet. So I'm selling a home while I'm building a home, and it got to that point where I had the old home listed on the market, and of course I had a home inspection, and I had never heard of this. And this is kind of funny because at a much earlier age, my family had a real estate brokerage, and I was, not totally immersed in it, but, pretty involved a little bit with the company and my dad ran. And we didn't have home inspections back then. And so really nice young couple, first-time home buyers, are there. It's 9 o'clock on Saturday morning, and the home is vacant. And I went just to check on it and, blow leaves. It was winter months and all that. And so the guy, I had built a pool about a year or two earlier, or I was the general contractor of it. And this home inspector guy, really nice retired engineer, I found out, asked me how I built the pool. and I thought that was an odd question from a home inspector guy.
Right.
And so for about 5 minutes, I explained the overview of building a pool, and this nice couple's listening. And he thanks me, and he turns to them, and he repeats exactly what they just heard from me for about 5 minutes. And I said, pretty amazing. And so I tried to excuse myself so he could do his job, and, I had to go to work. And I went in the house for a minute, and I came back out, and he started asking questions about plumbing and stuff. And I was like, I'll just let you do your thing. I don't want to interfere. And I went outside, and they're sitting on a bench in the patio with a hot tub, and I asked them, so I never heard of home inspector. Where do you find a guy like this? And they both kind of said real sheepishly and shrugged their shoulders. They said Yellow Pages. And I could tell they were really bummed out after 5-10 minutes of this. Right. And I said, so how much does this kind of thing cost? Because I had no idea. And they said $490. And I said, oh, well, that's neat. And I left, and I said, "Hoo boy, I found it. This is what I'm going to do. I know plenty about construction and this and that." So I did a survey Monday morning out of the Yellow Pages. In Atlanta, there's lots of pages of home inspectors at the time.
Sure.
That were listed in there, and most of them, funny enough, don't answer the phone. But when I did get a hold of them, it was funny to hear Mike Crow say that later on when I met Mike. But, I was just amazed, and I said, wow, and I never knew. So I went about looking for, I knew I had to get up to date on different things. So I was actually saved by my mentor, my early on mentor, Shannon Corey, who was with ITA. And I ended up, Shannon's a great instructor, extremely knowledgeable. Right. And took me under his wing. I went to a couple of local ASHI meetings before I even went to ITA, and did the fast track course, and ended up filling in every once in a while for Shannon when his voice would give out after instructing all week. And that's it. The couple of guys that I really respected at these meetings that I met, I asked them, so how many inspections do you think I'll do my first year? And they were all like, 25 or 50 if you're lucky. And I said, I can't do that. That's not a business. So right. I did end up doing, I think a really good amount, 241 my first year.
Nice.
Yeah, it was good. I didn't get certified, but I came close. I did the next month through ASHI. And so that's the long story of it. That's how I got started.
Well, cool. And that was around 2005. Was that correct?
I started in the spring planning the new business, and I think it was around March I went to ITA in Atlanta. And then my target date, because I had to close the business and rent out the commercial property I owned, was September. So September 4th was actually my first inspection, a couple of days after I started going full-time doing it, and that was it.
Okay, so 2005, so you've roughly, 2015 now, you've roughly been inspecting for about 10 years. Tell us about some of the changes that you've seen in that 10-year period.
Quite a bit. It's kind of funny. My first 4 or 5 inspections, I remember actually faxing the report. From the get-go, I used good software, the same software I use today, the ITA electronic version of the Matrix.
Right.
I wanted software that I owned and didn't have to pay as I went or anything like that.
Right.
And, I would print it out, and I would fax, a 25, 30, 35-page report to the realtor and the client. It was amazing. And, pretty soon I picked up, I think emailing would be better. And, and so, they just started to be emailed at the time, in this area anyway. So, from the get-go, we had good software with photos, great summary page, and, it's changed a lot. It was, give or take a couple of years there were still a lot of guys doing handwritten checkbox-style reports where they gave you the NCR copy. So that was one early change.
Right.
Other changes really have been the increase of marketing, because it wasn't too much before that, although I wasn't aware of MIC, that marketing and trying to streamline your marketing came into effect. So that's another big change. And it seemed like the majority of inspectors at the time, it was one-man operations. There were always a few franchises around and a few multi-inspector firms, but it seems like today there's a few more multi-inspector firms than today. So that's another change.
That's go ahead. I was going to say that's a good lead into my next question, but if you still got some more.
Well, really, the last thing is the changes that have come with licensing laws becoming more prevalent in the state. Right. There was a start back maybe 10 to 15 years ago with a couple, and it's really caught a lot of power. Now, Georgia still isn't a licensed state. We tried to do something in that direction, and the governor didn't sign it after we put a lot of effort forward. But the other thing is really the change in realtors with the market correction that happened for 3 or 4 years. We were focused and grew, but a lot of changes. Just in the real estate industry in general. I think realtors as well as inspectors have become a lot smarter in how they operate.
Absolutely. And by the way, Phil, he's got an advantage over a lot of us. He's married to a realtor, so realtors they do send us a lot of business. Well, not that, but the fact that he can see it from a realtor's point of view and get a realtor's point of view. Now, you mentioned multi-inspector firm. I know you're a multi-inspector firm. How many inspectors do you have, Phil? And tell us what it was like to hire that first one, because I know a lot of guys out there are struggling with that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a huge question because I've just begun to coach a little bit, and it's a huge question for the guys who are wanting to make that transition. It's like the biggest thing on their mind, and it's only because they haven't been on the other side of the fence yet.
Right.
I will tell you that in 2010, when I hired my first inspector, I was just killing myself doing too many, and I wasn't smart enough really to bring somebody on. I got to tell you, the experience went pretty well. For me, the most challenging part was letting go. I had him trained in 90 days. He had been a superintendent that built several thousand homes for different builders. But the biggest challenge in the actual technical part was most folks who are trained contractors in one discipline or another. It's out with the old and in with the new. So as a home inspector, the biggest difference on the technical side is that they now have to be a historian of whatever property they show up at. And I think that's still a bit of a challenge. I forget more than I know or have known about when something became current and applicable in a home. And so that's the biggest challenge, is getting them to go back and memorize, learn, or use reference books when you code master or whatever you need to recall when something was required. On the other end, outside of technical, is really finding the right person that can communicate their finding in a neutral way. We all know that.
Right.
But letting go after a fast-track training of 90 days, I got him at about 85-90% where I was comfortable anyways. And letting go and report review, and just, that's the first hurdle, systems in place to make sure things go. And then I developed over time. It really took a while, because it wasn't until about just a year ago that I kind of stopped doing a lot of inspections. And I found a very good technique where, realtors get attached to their inspector for good reason. They trust them.
Right.
And building that trust isn't easy for either one, really. And then letting go and letting some new guy come in was tough. So what I would do is I would be at the inspection with my inspector and walk through and just kind of be there while they did the portion where they reported on the findings and communicated to that. And then, I would ask the realtor and the client. So that went pretty good. And I would ask the realtor, what they thought. And because I was there, it helps make a transition. So I think that was an important thing, is being there when you have a new inspector or your first inspector to kind of bridge that transition from you to the new person.
That's absolutely. And everybody who's listening out there, Phil just gave you guys a golden nugget, because that really is hard to wean, the realtor that loves you to get you to use, and that's a good technique to, just go with them for a long time until they'll eventually start to get comfortable with the other guy. And then, what will happen, Phil, I've evolved to where they want the other guy more than me now, so.
I know, and at first I didn't like that. It's exactly what we want. But I was like, geez, what about me?
I know. It's like, you got what you wanted, but hey.
Yeah, I know. It's funny.
I hear you. Well, Phil, what? Tell us. You mentioned that guy being on a 90-day fast track, but I know everybody comes in at different skill levels. When you hire a guy, do you have a training process? Tell us more about that. What's that look like? I imagine it depends on their experience level.
Well, I can't explain it without first saying thank you to people like Gordon Fox and many others, Wally Conway. There's just so many inspectors across the country that I've been exposed to that have given me those golden nuggets. And Gordon, for one, when I asked him, we were at dinner one time, he suggested I take a guy like him out to dinner, and I did. And he was so forthcoming with everything. The basic bones and framework of paperwork and training I can attribute to getting from Gordon. We have a interview that's in the field, always with the inspector. It's a shadow right along. They sign an agreement that they are basically inspecting the inspector, and they're to, not answer any questions. So there's a protocol for the interview.
Right.
Really pull them aside. I always like to get them in front of a panel, a water heater, some component like that, and ask them, okay, you're the inspector. Let's pretend for a minute this is part of your interview process. Tell me what you see. Right. And some guys are going to say, oh, water heater. and then I have to, you pull it out of them. So I'm wanting to see what they know, what they don't know, maybe. If they can themselves just communicating, really, I don't care what they. And then the other thing I do at that interview is I pull up my laptop and I will just open up a Word document, put right on the top why I will be a great team player at ProTech, and tell them to have at it with about 200 plus words, and answer that question.
Wow.
I get a feeling of their computer skills. Do they know enough to word check?
Nice.
That's things like that. Do they hand peck? Do they use more than two fingers? Just all kinds of little things like that. And so that goes pretty well. And then I usually. You just go right ahead, Preston. That's what we're here for, to help each other. Then I like to get them on the roof just to see how their legs are. Many times I've said I can do that. And then get them on a little flat porch roof, and they start getting a little nervous, and get them up a little bit steeper, and, just kind of see how they feel,
Cool.
So that's kind of the interview process for the most part.
Right.
I've got a guy starting Monday, looks like a good young man. Father is currently a realtor, was a contractor. He has a little bit of 2x4 experience, as I like to call it. And he starts Monday. He did all those things, and we're going to have a day of orientation in the office where we go over some paperwork. I'm going to show him the basic outlines of some systems.
Right.
Give him a laptop, show them around a little bit on the software. I want them on the software right away. That's one thing that hangs up inspectors getting going. So by the end of the week, he will start sending me a report. He'll go do 2 a day every day, 5 days a week for 90 days. And at the end of the first week, I want a report emailed to me, and I don't care how bad it looks. I want him getting in habits immediately. He'll start doing some systems with the inspector. The inspector that he's going to go with is Stevens, and they both know I don't want helpers. I want inspectors, and that's what he signed up for. So, let's just get through this. And somewhere in and around 90 days, maybe 120. I should have an inspector. If it's taking longer than that, and he's doing it full time, there's something missing there. But just introduce him to systems at a time and helping the inspector. And within about a month, I kind of want him where he could probably do a poor job, but you just have to keep repeating in the habits. And we do have a system of how we go attack a home, like every company does, and just getting in those habits and him saying over and over to himself, it's the one place I don't go that will bite me in the behind sooner or later.
Right.
Keeping his eyes open, keeping his eyes focused, sticking to the basics, sticking to the system. That's the important thing, is the habits, really.
Yeah, no, your training's amazingly. I mean, it's pretty close to ours, and I would say 90 days is probably about average. We got some that go a little longer, some that come to us that takes less, that are just rocking and rolling. It just depends on how much they need. Some people are, rock stars at the report, and some not so much. So, it always depends. And, I wanted to back up. Phil mentioned Gordon Fox and Wally Conway, who are, the rock stars in the inspection world. Anybody who's listening, if you want to go back, that's Gordon is interview number 2, I think, and Wally's like 14, I think, 14, 15, something like that. Really good interviews. Well, and you know what? You're exactly right. They would both help anybody, and I know you will too. And we'll get your contact info here at the end of the interview. Well, Phil, let's say that I'm a buyer or real estate agent in your market in Atlanta, and there are other home inspectors in your market. Why should I hire you? Is there something that you do that others don't?
And
I apologize, Phil. For some reason, to the listeners out there, I for some reason when I texted him the questions, they didn't come through or something. So he didn't have time to see the question ahead of time. So he is answering right off the tape there. So. I'm definitely going to answer that, and I'm going to mention that there's another person in there too that helped me start off, and it would be a shame if I didn't mention Frank Cooper, who you know pretty darn well. Yep. Frank is right here with me in the Atlanta area, and Frank was very, very encouraging when I started. Frank has been at this 20-something years. Right.
He's been president of Ashley, Georgia, and if he listens to this, he'll laugh about that one. Well, yeah, there's just Frank and I have done a lot of traveling to different events together, and we're very helpful. And now we're friendly competitors, and it's not that difficult to remain friends. There's so much business for everybody, and Frank has such a great attitude about you can't get every realtor, and we lose realtors back and forth to each other, and kind of chuckle about it and kind of wish I wish I didn't lose that one or something, but it is what it is. And Frank was very, very helpful doing that. But the reason why some would choose us, I would say, like most inspectors, we are really attached to our report. I would say that and I'm attached to mine too. I like myself. And I think about changing it from time to time. I said, nah, it's not broke. I don't need to fix that. One thing is, in our summary, we lay out our summary to knowing what is going to happen next. Is there's usually some kind of a amendment to address concerns. So we group our summary in one place, like many do, but we do break it down to what contractor will repair a system. So we have anywhere from 4 or 5 to 7 or 8 paragraphs under a heading like general contractor. That might be moisture damaged wood things, anything general contractors would fix. We'll have electrical, plumbing, roof, on and on, pool, things like that. And they're broke down to systems where, that is the contractor that would repair. We try to make our report and summary area where it's very user-friendly, so with very few modification, it can be cut and paste into an amendment.
Right.
And I think that's a unique, maybe not completely unique, but as many reports as I've seen, not many do that. And I think it's very helpful to our client. It's very helpful to those contractors, very helpful to the realtors, very helpful to the sellers to just have it categorized so that the next step in what they need, not what I want to do,
right,
but what they need is a little bit simpler.
Right.
And so that's one thing. And I would say all the USPs that are now not USPs, but they're, kind of like, as Jeff Donaldson would say, required selling points. Yeah, well, it's just gotten that way with the proliferation of, great things that, ISG has brought to the market with 90-day warranty and all. But we do a few inspections, like a septic evaluation, which some others are doing now. We've been doing it quite a while, to help people determine what they need to do with their septic system. That's a little bit unique in our area. There are more now. I mean, the way it is, Preston, is you pioneer something,
Right.
and then, at whatever amount of time lag there is, your colleague, competitor, whatever you want to call them, they pick it up. So whether it was searching for some warranty to offer clients 7, 8, 9 years ago, and then everybody starts doing it, or any of those other systems, right now it seems to be, septic evaluation is one of the few services we offer, but being able to go back and write what we call a lender letter has been pretty successful. Appraisers go in there and do their thing, and they don't have answers to questions like, why is that stain on the ceiling? But if we were there, of course, we can write a little letter that takes care of underwriting, things like that, set us apart. I would say the number one thing is actually realtors know that we have a very good understanding of the real estate transaction.
Right.
And that we're not looking at this from a point of view that, just a home inspector point of view, I guess. That's probably one of the number one things.
Cool. Well,
yeah.
Phil, you know as well as I do, if you do enough inspections, you're going to have an unhappy camper. It's going to happen.
Sure.
How do you handle an unhappy camper? Do you have a process, and what's that look like?
Yeah, and everybody has to deal with reality. And as we all know, when we've made the transition from the sole operator to the monthly inspector, you're going to have more of that. It just is a little bit different if it's not you where the buck stops. So it's a great question. And the first thing is it comes into our scheduler, and she'll fill out an unhappy camper form. It goes to Joyce or I, and we pull the report, review the complaint, call the inspector, ask them what's going on with this, I don't see this is the complaint. Sometimes we'll go ahead and call the client first. Sometimes we'll call the realtor first. And let them know that we got a complaint, we're handling it. Sometimes they know, sometimes they don't. But we keep them in the loop because that's future business. They may have referred us if it wasn't a prior client referral. And then we just have to investigate.
Sure.
We go to great lengths to let people know that thorough doesn't mean that we are not perfect. Thorough doesn't mean that things don't change today after the inspection. So a good part of it is education.
Right.
When we are, there's no doubt in my mind that I missed something, because they'll do that from time to time. You just can't be perfect.
Sure.
We just have to stand up and take the hit, go through the process, talk about warranty that we give them, refund if we need to, do what we have to do things right. Not always do they agree. His light bulb burnt out after he moved in, and we can't control that. But it's all about doing the right thing, trying to step outside of my shoes into theirs, and it
Sure.
can be challenging because it's so hard sometimes not to be defensive.
Exactly. Well, and you take it personally, and
sure.
I'm the same as you are. I mean, if we miss something, and every once in a while we do, we step up. We try to fix it. One thing I kind of learned, Phil, is, they call you, something's wrong. They got roof leak, air conditioner's not working, and they immediately say there was nothing on the report. And you know what I found out more times than not? It is actually on the report. They just so I always listen, and and I like, well, let me get the report and call you back, and when it is on the report, I always tell the guys, secretly I'm doing a fist pump, but but
yeah.
not to them. They have a problem, and you call them and you're as empathetic as you can, and and I apologize for this problem you're having here. Unfortunately on page so-and-so, we did mention this, but, I tell you what, I know this AC guy, he's a personal friend of mine, he'll give you a good rate, blah, blah. You still try to help him out, you know what I mean? And a lot of times they just want to vent, that sort of thing. So,
another thing too, Preston, I found is you don't have to be the best inspector on the planet. One of the things that really will help folks out there is solid report writing.
Right.
And, and I don't mean, I load reports that I look at that are loaded with CYA for the purpose of CYA alone.
Right.
And I really just don't like that. But, we just inserted a big change near our summary, and it's close to a page long explaining the scope of the home inspection. There's things all over our report about it in the agreement. It's on our website, so been many standards, but we put it right there to explain to them, so now they have an increased, hopefully, understanding,
right,
what it means to get an inspection, because I know that a consumer who buys a home every 4, 5, 6, 10 years, this is a one-time thing for them in that amount of years, whereas we're doing it every day. And basically through TV or whatever, DIY shows, they have an understanding that if you miss something or it's perceived it was missed, that you're responsible and it's an insurance policy. So I've now found in, my increasing maturity that comes through time and experience that, education is the key, in reporting is so important. How you do it and how you recommend them to proceed after you found something. It's not good enough to say, we recommend a repair. We've been using for a long time, words that were given by a great inspector who's been at it forever down here, Jerry, and one of his the way he words it is, we recommend further evaluation by a licensed electrician to further evaluate, further evaluate the entire system and place it in safe, warrantable, and serviceable condition before the end of due diligence or closing. And
nice.
And that's, I missed a couple of words there or something, misstated it, but the thing of it is when they find something wrong, that's my first, we find something wrong and report it. It was one of the first questions when they call and I see that it's in the report, and I ask them, so when you took our advice that we gave you, and you contacted a licensed contractor to evaluate that issue and the system, what did they tell you? And usually they say, we didn't ask her. We didn't do that. Well, I'm silent for a moment, and he said, well, you hired us to inspect, find defects, and recommend, and you didn't follow our advice. And they're usually stunned with the realization that, oh, it's in the report, and I didn't do anything about it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I've been there, and it's it's kind of like you said, you're doing a little fist pump on the inside, but on the outside, you're very concerned and very, and I have had some, that go on, like, well, you didn't say it clear enough, or something. I'm just like, did you want me to grab you by your lapels?
Yeah. Well, you know what? And they might be right. It may not have been explained to them in enough detail, but I know that it's in writing and it was handed to them. They downloaded it.
Yeah, and they signed off on it.
If you do a great report, then really that's like the biggest part of the battle.
Absolutely. Well, Phil, we're going to get into some highs and lows here in a second, but first, let's take a pause for our sponsor.
Are you struggling to make your home inspection business grow? Well, have I got the answer for you. HomeInspectionFlyers.com. At HomeInspectionFlyers.com, you get 5 flyers a month. There are 3 sales flyers and 2 recipe flyers. And you can customize them to exactly what you want. And these make great flyers when you go to the offices to put in their boxes, especially if you're doing like candy bowls or something along that nature. Like I said, it's 5 flyers a month for $29.99, and they're very creative. And you just put in your information. They come as a publisher file, and you just put in your information, and then you send them off to get printed. You can send them off online, and you can get color copies for less than 10 cents a copy. It's a great way to go. I went from being a 1-man home inspection firm to a 7-man home inspection firm on this one strategy alone. So try it today. HomeInspectionFlyers.com. Thanks.
All right. Well, folks, I am back here with Phil LeBlanc from Atlanta, Georgia, and he has a multi-inspector firm, and he has been dropping gold nuggets left and right. I hope you guys are taking notes, unless, of course, you're driving. In that case, you can listen to it again when you're at home and take some notes. Well, Phil, tell us about a time when you failed. Take us there, and what did you learn from it? Like, in the home inspection business, is there a time when you just really failed? I mean, we all have.
Yeah. I try to get over it. Let's see. Times that I've really blown it.
Or you thought something was going to work and it didn't, or you didn't learn something that you learned how to handle something differently next time. I guess that happens to me all the time.
I'm having trouble remember this one particular incident where it was in the last 3 years. Joyce was on board, and I just really failed. I had an unhappy camper,
right?
And I was being over defensive.
Right.
I think I had 2 or 3 complaints that week come in, and I even felt it. I couldn't put a name on it, but I was being over defensive. I wasn't seeing the client's point of view, and I was sticking up for my inspector, and
right.
I just knew I wasn't exercising customer service, and Joyce, had to be my moral compass, and she let me know.
Right.
And I can't remember the situation, but I just know I failed a client, and then I had to ask her to, for a while there, and she still does it today. I had to ask her to step in and start helping me with those, because she just she had a better approach than me, and she wasn't taking it personal from the inspector feel of it.
Sure.
So that's one area.
Well, sure, and you said it best when you answered that question earlier. It's hard to do, but you got to step out of your shoes and step into their shoes, and in their mind, they have a legitimate complaint. And it's hard when you feel like you did your best you could. I know, I get it. And by the way, the people who are listening, and Phil, you probably know this, they come in threes. I don't know why.
Don't say they do.
They come in threes. I don't know what it is, and it's like, it's like I'll go a long time without a complaint, and I'll be doggone within 2 days I'll have 3.
Yeah.
It's like I hate it when I get 2, because I'm just waiting for that third shoe to drop. And,
right.
I know people out there going, oh my gosh, I've never had that name. When you run a multi-inspector firm, you're just, how many complaints you got, multiply that by the number of people you got, and you know it happens. I mean, it's just part of the business. Well,
Yeah.
Phil, let's make it a little bit happier now. On the other end of the spectrum, I had this labeled as an I made it moment, but I kind of don't like that because I never feel like I made it because I always feel like I can improve. But have you had a come a long way moment? Have you ever had that moment where you're like, you know, when you're away from the business and wow, it's running without you or something like that?
Oh, sure. You know, I don't know that it ever gets, you know, the more, you know, growth is a funny thing. It's an uphill, it's an incline, you get to a plateau, and then maybe you add another inspector, you add another system. It could, you know, at any level, it could be the day you add a scheduler, a marketing person.
Right.
And then you get that nice cruise for a while.
Right.
And then, gee, you get what you asked for, business increases. and it pushes you to the next level. Right now, we are switching gears, going from 5-man operation to 6 with the new guy coming on. And so, you know, I know we're at another area of growth where we're going to be hiring a second scheduler, handling nights and Saturdays. That's coming on board now. However, that, you know, it's a good thing because our scheduler that comes in now on Monday morning isn't faced with the whole weekend catch-up of people that scheduled online, scheduled through our backup call center. And, you know, Mondays always being the busiest scheduling day of the week, you know, I would not want to be the scheduler today, you know, with the growth. So, you know, she'll have I mean, that's a great thing when you have more systems and people to come in place to take on that increased business. So those are happy moments, you know, when you realize, you know, a system, you know, there is another system out there to take you to that next level. There's a formula that you can go by. And that's a great part of being in mastermind groups and knowing other inspectors that share is that they help you with that.
Right. No, that's good stuff. Well, I'm changing gears here just a little bit, Phil. Do you have a favorite book that you would recommend to our listeners? Is there a book that you really particularly like?
Yeah, there's several. One, you know, when we have new people come in, I like to give them half a dozen or more books to read as time allows. And these are mainly the folks inside the internal part of the organization. Mm-hmm. One of my favorites is Influence by Dr. Richard Cialdini.
Oh, yeah.
He's kind of one of the grandfathers of marketing, right. In testing and looking at how, you know, words matter, whether it be NLP or just anything, but you can just change phrasing a little bit and you get a much different response. So, you know, I really do, you know, it can be dry reading, but I really like that. I like other books about systems as well, Good to Great, and different things. Habits is a great book. Of course, Michael Mayers has put out a couple of books that are more like stories, so it's easier for some of the people in the office to read about real estate marketing. But I you know, I mean, Think and Grow Rich and so many books out there, but I really keep going back to Influence being, you know, those 6 or 7 chapters in there being the core of so many other books are based on work like that.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. There's Influence and the Power of Influence. He outlined 6, I think he did a study, and he's like a psychologist or something. He did a study of these top salesmen, and like, you know, the stuff that he came up with 6 things that the top salespeople do, and I don't remember all of them offhand, but one of them is obviously the social proof, you know, and we all know that, you know, the power of testimony or somebody, you know, giving you a good review. And the other one is the power of reciprocity,
Oh yeah.
Where you do something for somebody and they will do back for you. But you're right. I highly recommend that. Well, Phil,
very powerful.
Yeah. We talked about, how they've changed, and I know neither one of us has a crystal ball, but if you had to guess, how would you think home inspections are going to change in the future?
We've seen a little bit of a dabble with, a couple things. First, we've seen with reporting, we've seen dabbles with video. I think video will play a huge part of inspecting where it will become the standard at some point in the future.
Right.
I also think systems are so important in just streamlining a process. And, today they're being more and more and more run like the business, not just a contractor that, starts inspecting. And I just think it's being run more as a business. I think we'll probably get to a point too where we'll see some pretty large companies get involved in the process, and I think it's for the one reason that home inspectors are given an enormous amount of trust by the customer, and through that trust base, it opens many doors for other services and products.
Right. No, I think you're dead on. Well, Phil, have you ever been thrown under the bus by a contractor? You get that call. My contractor says that my home inspector should have seen that. Do you have any ideas on? I don't think we can ever stop it, but do you have any ideas on how we could prevent it, or not totally prevent it, but what's the best approach you think to at least contain it, or? I don't know. It aggravates me. Can you tell?
And me too. I don't see a real end. Everybody's different. Let's see. Okay, so Christie's just had an auction where a Picasso went for a record amount of money the other day. Right. And I look at it like that. When a contractor puts his knowledge and effort into building something, installing something, hopefully he's doing the best he can. Here comes the home inspector, who's now an art critic in his eyes,
right.
A food critic, whatever, and picking apart what's wrong with something that, he's done. Mm-hmm. So on the converse side, we're going in just doing a job. A lot of contractors, people today don't accept a lot of responsibility. So in being that everybody makes mistakes, including a contractor, home inspector's there to things. It's not always just failure that they find. If something wasn't installed properly or something. And of course, many times contractors will say, for several reasons, one is they're trying to gain trust and get the job. Didn't you get a home inspection? You should have caught this.
Right.
Not being there at the condition or understanding what we did. And so I think it's a back and forth thing a little bit. And so, yes, contractors have thrown homes was inspected, things was done under the bus, and, they don't realize what condition was there when we were there 6 months or a year ago. Maybe it was hidden, maybe it wasn't, but sure. Contractors did it. There are some realtors who don't have a lot of experience who have from time to time. They didn't inspect the home, so I certainly understand if a complaint comes in, something fails, them telling their client, well, did you call your home inspector? Now, that's not definitely throwing somebody under the bus, but, from time to time, one or two inexperienced realtors have, found themselves in a tough spot, and it's not their fault, but, and they're representing their client, in all fairness to them, but they've kind of heaped coals maybe on an inspector. I've heard stories about that. We've been fortunate; it's not happened a whole lot with us.
Well, yeah, and a lot of realtors are great. Don't get me wrong, but there's a few
exactly
that will maybe set the wrong expectation before they call. We'll tell them to immediately call the home inspector. They'll pay for it without even knowing. It could be that air conditioner that you said there was something wrong with already. So I mean, I don't know. Well, Phil, I wanted to ask your opinion on something. I'm bothered by what I see sometimes on home inspector forums. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of forums that are great. There's a lot of people on there that are willing to help. But there's also some chest thumpers on there. And, sometimes I'll see, an inspector ask a question or, so I don't know, it just sometimes will disintegrate to some unprofessionalism. I'd like to ask your opinion on this because how do you think we could keep it, raise the standard or keep it professional? You have any ideas on that?
Yeah, I saw a movie a long time ago. It was an animated movie. And I remember this little rabbit saying to his mother when she said, "What did your father say?" And he said, "If you don't have something good to say, don't say anything at all."
Right.
Bambi came up a little before my time, but, you don't always have to be right. And really, it's a golden rule thing. Be kind. That's all. I've heard about what you're saying about I stay out of forums a good bit. I have nothing to prove about how much I know or I don't know. I don't believe I'm the best inspector on the planet by a huge long run. But really, I mean, that's it. Golden rule.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah, and the rule I have with my company and my family is it's okay to disagree, but it's not okay to disrespect.
Oh, yeah, perfect.
And that's the way we are. You don't always have to agree with me, but you have to respect me, and I have to respect you. So, just because you don't agree doesn't mean we have to disintegrate to...
Right. You're spot on, buddy.
Well, Phil, with this question in mind, remember it's a G-rated show here. What is the wildest, craziest, or weirdest thing that you've ever found on a home inspection?
So I found it. There's parts of every city that are, better than others. So one Saturday morning, I had an inspection in a really tough part of Atlanta. And, I thought it would be fine. I'd get there at 7 a.m, weekend, everybody should be in bed. Well, I got there, and these homes are, 5-10 feet apart. They're all long, narrow. They're right up on the curb. Nowhere to park. Really a condemned area. There's drug runners on the corners. They're all lively and wired. And so I was paranoid from the get-go. So I called my friend I mentioned, Frank Cooper, and I have a license to carry, and I knew where I was going, so I was prepared and armed. So I said, Frank, I want to go in and clear this house. Can you kind of stay on the phone with me? I'm a little uncomfortable where I'm at. And he said, oh, sure, I know exactly where you are. So I go in the home, and, by all means, it's, run down and all this. And, there's a couch, and there's a coffee table, and there's stuff on it. I don't hear anybody. I don't see anybody. So I'm going room to room down a long, narrow hall, and I'm opening the doors and looking in the closet, and nobody's there. But I got a feeling like somebody's squatting. And I get to the last room in front, the very front of the home where I started again, and I'm about to hang up, and I'm thanking Frank and all that. I'm starting to feel a little better. And I said, wait a minute, I don't think I checked this closet. And I opened the closet in the room, and there's like 3 guys in there, like shoulder to shoulder. And the funniest thing is I think they were more scared than I was. I was shocked when I opened that door really quick. And I'm holding a 9mm, and they're like, oh, and it was kind of funny. I was like, damn it, this is not worth it. So I walked up front, and I thought for a minute, and the 2 things I could think of is either they're busting the windows out of my service vehicle and stealing my stuff from my vehicle, or I go in the crawl space and they see me go in there, and it's one of those old crawl spaces that are now. And, they're taking pot shots at me through the windows to the crawl space. And, so I said, nah, it's not anywhere $400. So I just packed up and I called the guys who grew up in the house but lived in New York. And I just left them a message that, I'm not doing the inspection. The area was loaded with bugs and you have to find somebody else. It's actually one of 2 times I ever walked away from an inspection.
Oh my gosh. Well, I I'd have to change my britches. Of course, it was good you had the 9mm because you get up on them. I mean, they might use a knife or something because they're scared too.
Right. Yeah, it was kind of odd, but
well,
yeah,
Phil,
that was a funny one.
Oh, you did that story great too. Like when you got back and you led up to that closet, you just knew I could hear the music. Well.
Oh yeah, I mean it was amazing. The hair went right up on my arms, and I didn't expect it, but it just happened to be the last closet. I thought I was in the clear zone, and I was going to go ahead and bingo.
Wow. Well, Phil, we're getting down towards the end here, and you've been very gracious with your time and dropped all kinds of gold nuggets. Just got 2 or 3 more questions. What is there anything that you're working on right now, Phil, that has you jacked up or excited about?
Yes, retirement. Going to get a place on the island with Joyce, and it's a few years away, but we're working on it. Yeah, that's got me really jacked up. Actually, aside from that, in the business is what you meant. More and more it's been happening the last couple of years, and Joyce is a big part of it. Putting systems into place where we can be away from the business and enjoy our lives. When she came in 2012, which I hope you get that story from her in an interview in another day because it's kind of funny. But it is how things happen, and she's been instrumental in being such a planner in helping us get systems in place that have allowed us to not have to be 24/7. I remember the first summer together, we were, in family situations, the phone rang. We were on vacations up in New Hampshire, family. We were down with her family in Florida. And here I am like an idiot answering the phone. She's scheduling, very frantic, not fun. So I would say those are the best things right there is getting these systems in place so that we can have a life.
I hear you, brother. If you had your choice of islands, which island would you retire in?
Well, there's so many that we haven't been to. We did go to Turks and Caicos last year, and it was amazing. Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Cool. I'll tell you another great one. Go to St. John's.
Yeah.
St. John's is awesome. I love St. John's. Because it's one of those volcanic islands, so it has like mountains and stuff too. So it's great.
Yeah. Well, I've seen pictures, and I envy you. That's awesome.
Well, cool. Well, I'm down to the last question here, Phil, but it's a doozy. If you had to move to a brand new town equal to the size of Atlanta, all right, same size of Atlanta, you still have all of your current equipment, all of your current knowledge, all your current guys, but this town, you don't know anybody, and you have $5,000. But everything else, room and board paid for, your equipment's paid for. What are you doing? So basically, you have $5,000 to generate some marketing, some business. What are you doing that first week with that $5,000? What are you going to get the best return on? Yeah, that's the question behind the question, I guess.
Okay. First of all, it would be Charlotte.
No, don't move here.
No, I'm just kidding. I from time to time, I had thought about when my dad was alive. I had thought about going back to New England, but that's out now. My dad passed away last year at a ripe old age of 92. Oh, he had a great life. Thank you. I don't know what town I would start it in. However, because Atlanta's a great place to start a business. But what I would do with it is I would probably low cost, no cost. The number one thing is being in front of people.
Right.
So it would have to be printed materials. It would have to be lettering on a vehicle and such, and having a professional look, uniforms. It would have to be probably presentations. It would be presentations, handouts. I mean, our little yellow pen, we get so much value out of that. They're only 23 cents each. It would probably be the printed materials and having it professionally branded. and that doesn't really scratch the whole surface because you can do that very inexpensively today.
Right.
It would be the marketing. It would be the standard marketing materials. I wouldn't go spend that whole $5,000 in 1 week. I would say, that's probably my best answer is the printed materials. I would probably, from the get-go, do what I didn't do until several years into it. I would join a mastermind group,
right?
Just like the Millionaire Inspector community. I cannot say enough good about what Mike Crow and his organization has given companies and families that run companies like ours over the years, and that would go directly involved in my startup of a business. I have seen so many that I could name that have started from scratch when they joined, and it just skyrocketed them, shortened the curve, fewer mistakes. That'd probably be the best money spent right there.
Right. Well, awesome. Well, Phil, you have been more than generous with your time. You've shared a lot of gold nuggets, and I know all the listeners appreciate it. What do you have a Facebook page so all the listeners can go and give you some likes on your Facebook page?
You know what? That's very funny. I couldn't tell you what it is. Joyce, what's our Facebook? Protect what? Yeah, but what's the Protect one? Joyce is telling me it's under Phil LeBlanc, and I couldn't give you the exact URL. Isn't that terrible? I would tell people that they could reach us on Facebook and give us a like by going to protect-inspect.com.
Okay.
And we do have our Facebook icon up there at the top of the page.
Okay.
Yeah, and any of the inspectors out there, if you see anything on our page you like, just contact us. We're happy to share. It'd be a pleasure to help people. So many have helped us.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Phil. Do you have an email where they could email you?
Sure. The best email to reach us is the one we visit frequently, most frequently. That's management.protech, PROTECH, @gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, Phil, like I said, you've been more than generous with your time and dropped all kinds of gold nuggets. I sure do appreciate it, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
Well, Preston, I've got to say, what you're doing here, opening this forum with the podcast, so many people that are in our industry can share. I can't thank you enough for the opportunity to be a part of it, and I'm just so happy to contribute in the small way that we have.
Well, thank you so much, Phil. I appreciate it, brother. Well, you guys have a good evening, and I hope Joyce gets to feeling better.
Oh, she will. You say hi to Meg.
All right. Thanks a lot, Phil.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for checking out the Successful Home Inspector podcast. You can find show links at thesuccessfulhomeinspector.com. Check out the website for special offers, information, and other resources. Thanks again for listening to the Successful Home Inspector podcast. And remember to check back for new episodes. The Successful Home Inspector podcast is brought to you by Preston Sandlin and Home Inspection Carolina.